Hello, good evening. My name is Ankit Sharma. I am a PhD scholar at Gujarat University and I'm doing research on non-performing assets. And my research is a multidisciplinary research. It combines the disciplines of economics and finance. And today I'm going to be a faculty for this demo session for CollegeDekho. And in this demo session, we'll be taking up the subject of cost accounting and management accounting. And in this subject, the topic that we will be looking today is called budgets and budgetary control. And since this is a demo session, this is just a 30-minute session. It is supposed to show you how classes at CollegeDekho would be conducted on day-to-day basis or on weekly basis, and how these 1 hour sessions will be conducted and how detailed the basic explanations will be. So coming back to our session for today, we'll be looking at budgets and budgetary control. And since again this is a demo session, we will not be going into much details about these topics. Again, these are just meant to show you how these classes will be conducted. And but still we'll be looking briefly over this topic, and we will be understanding briefly about the components of this topic. Right now, let us begin. So the topic for today is budgets and budgetary control. And in this topic, we'll be looking at what budget and budgeting means, what budgetary control means, and the various advantages and limitations of a budgetary control system. All right. Now, let us begin with what does this term budget means, right? We have all been hearing about this word that we have already gone out of budget, right? Whenever you demand something from your parents, they're like, no, इस महीने का budget खत्म हो गया है, and we will try to purchase it for you tomorrow. And but we have all been hearing about this term budget, but what does this term budget exactly means, right? So budget is nothing but a quantitative expression of a plan for a defined period of time. All right, we are talking about businesses, we are talking about companies. So these budgets are a quantitative expression, right? Because in quantitative expression there are values involved, right? There are these numbers involved, like for example, that this much is going to be my revenue, this much is going to my profit. So out of this profit or out of this revenue, what part can I allocate to the budget for a specific operation or to the budget of a specific project, right? So a budget is a quantitative expression of a plan for a defined period of time, as in you cannot make budget for the entire life as of now, right? Because the future is uncertain. So a budget is made for smaller periods of time. It could be made for a month if it is an individual or even a company. It could be made for a quarter, it could be made half yearly, or it could be made for a year as well, right? For example, government comes out with these yearly budgetary plans, right? For example, various types of ministries are allocated different types of budgets for development in their own area, right? So that was an example of how budgets are made for different periods of time and what budget basically means. All right, and now a budget basically may include different types of aspects, like since again we are talking about companies here, we are not talking about individuals. So a budget for a company may include sales revenue, as an estimation of sales revenue, how much sales revenue is a company supposed to or expected to generate in the coming year, right? So it may include sales revenue, it may include expenses. Now the fixed expenses can already be accounted for because they are fixed, like your rent and like your salaries and wages, right? So these are fixed expenses, you can already account for them, you can already include them in your budget. But there could be other unplanned expenses as well, the which are not fixed, right? Now it may include a budget may include data related to sales volume or your revenue or your the raw material that the company is sourcing. Now this raw material could not just be in the form of goods, It could be in the form of services as well, right? So whatever raw material that a company is using, and what is the cost of that raw material, and the availability of that raw material, or if the cost of this raw material is supposed to increase in the coming year, for which the budget is being made, all of these different aspects are included in the budget. All right. Now let us understand what the term budgeting means, right? Budgeting is nothing but a means of coordinating this combined intelligence of entire organization, this combined planning of the entire organization, as in planning related to sales or revenue, or this cost of raw material, the cash flows, right? It is a coordination, it is a combination of all of these different plans for the organization, that may depend on the past performance, as in data related to the past performance is taken, as in for this previous year, if an organization had accounted for some expenses. Now if the experience of the organization is such that कि नहीं, लास्ट ईयर में तो इतना बजट बनाया था लेकिन ये एक्सपीरियंस, ये एक्सपेंस अलग से आ गया, so we had to account for them, account for that expense. Now using this past experience, a company may already allocate, a company may already account for these risks in the current year, in the current budget. All right. And this entire process of making this budget, right, and using the past experience, using the past performance, and combining all of these different processes, all of these different departments, the sales department, or the operations, or the manufacturing department, all right, combining the planning of all of these different departments, all of these different plans, is what budgeting is concerned with, right? So budget, to sum up this topic, to sum up this slide, budget is a quantitative expression of a plan for a defined period of time, and budgeting is a combination of plans of different departments, of different projects, of that may depend on the past performance or the past experience of the company, and it may influence the course of business in the future. All right, because now we are using the past performance, the past experience of the company. In the same example कि last year तो हमने इतना बजट बनाया था लेकिन इतना एक्सपेंस अचानक से आ गया कि रॉ मटेरियल, लेबर का प्राइस बढ़ गया एकदम से, कि रॉ मटेरियल जो हम सोर्स करते थे, जो आउट ऑफ कंट्री से आता था, एकदम से उसका प्राइस बढ़ गया. नाउ टू गिव यू अ वेरी रेलिवेंट एग्जांपल ऑफ दिस, during COVID-19, we know what happened in Ladakh between India and China. There was a military face-off between India and China. And because of this, the raw materials that were coming in from China were banned. All right. And all of these manufacturing companies, all of these industries that were using raw materials from China, they all of a sudden had to pay a lot of money for sourcing these raw materials from other sources, right? Because the raw material from China was banned now. So, in order to do so, this sudden situation that had come along, now this situation could be accounted for in the current budget. And now I already know कि अभी China से तो नहीं आने वाले raw materials. So whichever place it is coming from, right? And the price, the extra price that I'm already paying for this new source, that will be accounted for in my current budget, and it may influence the course of the business in the future, as in course of the future, a course of the business in the future, in the sense that now the material is being sourced from other source, right? The raw material. And not just that, a company or a business may also choose to find alternatives for this raw material, right? Now that we know that this material is not going to come from the usual source, which is China, and now that it is going to come from other source, which is very costly. Now I may look for, the company may look for an alternative source of finding this raw material, which may ultimately be cheaper. All right. So all of this process may change the course of business in the future. All right. So this was all about budget and budgeting. I hope this was clear. Now let us understand the characteristics of a budget. All right, and there could be many different characteristics of a budget. All of these are qualitative aspects of a budget. All right, I'll just go back for a second. In the definition of budget, we understood that it is a quantitative measure, right? And when we are talking about characteristics, these are qualitative aspects of a budget. All right, there are many different characteristics of a budget. We'll be looking at a few of them. For example, that a budget is concerned for a definite future period. Like we already talked about, that it may be made for a month, or it may be made for a quarter, it may be made for half year, it could be made for an entire financial year, right? So it is concerned for a definite future period. It cannot be made for an indefinite future period, indefinite period of time, because then again the future is uncertain, right? You don't know what situation is going to arise from, what situation is going to arise in the future. For example, again using the same example, that the raw materials were banned from China because of the Indian army and China's army face off in Ladakh. So this is an unprecedented situation, right? No one could have seen this situation, no one could have predicted this situation. So again, this is because of such situations, you cannot make a budget that lasts for an indefinite period of time, right? This budget has to be broken down into different smaller periods of time, and using the experience, using the performance of the first budget, you keep on making changes in the subsequent budgets. All right, and again, that is why it is made for a definite future period of time. Now, the next characteristic, that it is a written document, because these budgets are made by the company, everything has to be documented, right? So it is a written document. Then a budget is a detailed plan of all the economic activities of a business, as in the various economic activities could be the expected sales revenue in the coming year, the cost of sourcing raw materials, the cost of sourcing services that will help me in making this final product or making this final service of my company. All right. Now, different economic activities could also be again the prices that you are paying, or the any activity that helps the business, that helps the company in arriving from the raw material to the ultimate final product. All right, all of these economic activities are included in a detailed budget plan, or there could be details about different departments of a business unit, right? Just like we talked about, that the sales department, or the revenue department, or the operations department, or the manufacturing department, details about all of these different departments and the costs that are allocated to these different departments in order to conduct their business. All right, all of these details could be included. Then budget helps in planning and coordination and control, right? Then a budget is prepared, just like we talked about, that it is prepared on the basis of past experiences, right? On the basis of past performance of a similar budget, that in the previous year you had made a budget, and let us say that वो budget sufficient नहीं था according to the practical requirements of the business. All right, that you had made a budget which was very hard to follow, which was very rigid, right? So इस साल के बजट में we will be a little more lenient with making the budget, and we will keep these things in mind. We will keep the practical requirements of the business in mind. All right, then there could be other characteristics, like a budget is a constant endeavor of the management, right? It has to be constantly changed, it has to be constantly modified after the end of each period, depending on the performance of one budget. There have to be changes that are made in the subsequent budgets, right? So it is a constant endeavor, it is a never ending endeavor. As long as the business is in place, as long as the management is there, there has to be a budget for the period that the business is operating in. All right, so it is a constant endeavor, it is a never ending endeavor. All right. Now that we have looked at the meaning of budget and the meaning of budgeting and the characteristics of a budget, now let us look at the meaning of budgetary control, which is the second part of our topic for today, budgets and budgetary control. Now we will be beginning with the meaning of budgetary control. What does this term budgetary control means? Right? So a budgetary control is a system in a business that exists in a business, and it is a system of management control and accounting, right? Because it is operated by the management, and it includes data regarding the procurement of raw materials or the sales revenue or the various expenses that the business could account for, right? So it is a system of management control and accounting in which various operations that are concerned with the business, these various operations are forecasted and planned in advance to the extent possible. All right. So these various situations that could be predicted, just like we talked कि पिछले साल तो इतना बजट बनाया था, but this situation came up, right? So while making the budget for this year, I will uh, I will think while making the budget for this year कि पिछले साल ये situation आई थी, क्या ये situation इस साल भी आ सकती है? और अगर इसका जवाब हाँ है, then I will make space for this situation. I will account for this situation in the current budget. All right. So budgetary control is a system of management control and accounting in which all of these different operations, all of these different situations are forecasted and planned in advance to the extent possible. We do not have to be super कि सब कुछ पहले से ही पता चल जाए, ऐसा नहीं. We don't have to be like that, but whatever extent that is possible and whatever the actual results are कि हमने सोचा था कि ये situation arise होगी और इसका इतना cost आएगा, but जो actually में हुआ, these planned situations and these actual events, they are compared, and then these changes, whatever the gaps are, they are accounted for in the next year, in the next budget. All right. So budgetary control is nothing but it is a management control. It is a system of management control and accounting in which different activities and operations of a business are accounted for in advance. They are planned, they are forecasted, and they are accounted for in advance to the extent possible. All right. And whatever the planned budget is and the actual events that are happening in the business as of now, these planned, these budgeted events and these actual events are compared, and if the gap is huge to fill in, then these situations are already also taken care of when you are making plans, when you are making budgets for the next year, the next period, the next session. All right. Now let us understand what does budgetary control system involves. Like first of all, as the name suggests, it involves establishment of budgets. You have to make budgets in the budgetary control system. Quite logical, right? Then if you're making budgets for a longer period of time, and if you're making budgets from one period to the other, to the other, to the other, then after the first budget is over and the second one comes and the third one comes, there has to be a comparison between the budgeted events and the actual events of all of these different budgets. All right, you have to understand whether the forecasting and the planning that is being done by the management, if it is on the right track or not, if it is on the same line as of the practical events of a business or not. All right. And these events are taken care of. Now budgetary control also involves revision of budgets. Once you know, again, if unprecedented situation has arisen, just like that China example that we used and the Ladakh face off. So if this situation has come all of a sudden, and if you know that the raw material is not going to come from China, वो किसी और जगह से आने वाला है जहाँ पे raw material is priced thrice the amount of what it was in China. So for example, if it was 100 rupees earlier, now you have to pay 300 rupees. Now the prices of raw material have tripled. All right, ये बहुत ज़्यादा increase है, and the current budget cannot account for this increase in the raw material prices, right? थोड़ा बहुत चेंज चलता, लेकिन ये सीधा 3 गुना हो गया है रॉ मटेरियल का प्राइसेस. नाउ टू अकाउंट फॉर ऑल ऑफ दीज unprecedented situations, there could be revisions that could be made to the current budgets. All right. Then if a budget fails, right, if a budget cannot meet the actual requirements, then there is also accountability that is placed on the management per se, or different persons in the management, the key management personnels. All right, so all of this process is involved in the budgetary control system. All right, we have looked at the meaning of budgetary control, we have looked at what it means. Now let us look at the features of budgetary control. And budgetary control basically involves, first of all, determining the objectives that the company or that the business is planning to achieve. All right, if you do not know what the plans or the objectives of a company is, then you cannot decide a path towards it, right? You'll just be going everywhere, right? But if you know that this is my goal, if I am at point A, and if the goal is to reach point B in terms of sales revenue, then you already have a path that is planned, that a path that exists. And using this system of budgetary control, you can plan out the budgets of different departments, you can plan out the budgets of different projects, and it helps you in reaching to the goal, right? So the first step, the first feature of budgetary control system is determining the objective that has to be achieved by the business. Then comes the determination of the variety of activities that should be undertaken for achieving these uh, objectives, for achieving these goals. So first of all, you have to identify what the objective is. Then secondly, you have to identify what activities have to be taken, what steps have to be taken in order to achieve these goals, in order to achieve these objectives. All right. Then once you know the goal, once you know the activities, then you have to make a plan, right? You have to make a plan which outlines in what order will these activities be undertaken in order to in order to achieve the objective, right? And then towards the last, again, just this thing that we have been talking about, that the budgets that are made and the actual practical events are compared together, and these differences are accounted for. So even while after knowing the objective, after knowing the activities, after making a plan to incorporate these activities, to undertake these activities, uh, you also have to look at whether these activities, whether these planned activities are too far away from the practical events, and whether I am too far away from the goal, right? Whether I'm deviating too much, whether the company is deviating too much, and then accordingly these changes are made again. Now let us look at the last part of this last section of this slide, which is the objectives of budgetary control. Right? There could be various objectives of budgetary control system, which again are qualitative in nature. Now we'll again be looking at a few of them. So first of all, uh, the main objective of budgetary control system is mainly the keeping the business in check, right? Keeping the expenses of the business in check, keeping the uh, procurement cost of raw materials in check, keeping in check the company, in a sense that whether the company is going in the right direction or not, or whether the costs are going over the budget or not, right? And whether if that is the case, that if the budgets are too far away from the reality, then, and if they have failed, if these budgets have failed miserably, then accounting for this failure on a particular project, or on a person, or on the management overall, like whoever may be responsible for this failure of the budget. All right. And then another objective of budgetary control could be ensuring that all of the resources that are available with the business, that they are being used to their optimal usage, right? That they are being used efficiently and to the very core of their efficient use, that everything out of them, everything from these resources could be used, can be used, and would be used. All right. Now we have understood budgeting. We have understood about budgeting, and budgeting control. Now let us look at a few of the advantages of budgeting control system. And yes, let's begin. So first of all, let us talk about the efficiency. Let us please read along here. The use of budgetary control system enables the management of a business concern to conduct its business activities in an efficient manner. Right? Just like we talked about that, all of these resources that are available with the business have to be efficiently used. They have to be used in a manner that none of the resources go to waste, right? Because these resources have already been paid for, right? The business has already purchased these raw materials, goods, these services. All right, so all of these raw materials, all of these resources that the business has, they have to be efficiently used. All right. Now let us look at another few advantages, like the control and expenditure. Again, it is a powerful instrument because it controls the costs of the business. It keeps the business in check कि मेरा इतना बजट है, और अगर मैं ये तरीके का रॉ मटेरियल खरीद रहा हूँ तो फिर वो बजट से ऊपर हो जाएगा, राइट? सो नाउ व्हाट विल आई लुक फॉर कि इसका ऑल्टरनेटिव रॉ मटेरियल क्या है, और वो जो ऑल्टरनेटिव रॉ मटेरियल है क्या वो मेरे बजट में फिक्स हो रहा है, और क्या इस रॉ मटेरियल, ऑल्टरनेटिव रॉ मटेरियल को यूज़ करके क्या मैं सेम क्वालिटी मेंटेन कर पा रहा हूँ. तो इन सब सवालों के जवाब के हिसाब से इट कीप्स द बिजनेस इन चेक. It keeps a control on the expenditure of the business. All right. Now next is finding deviations, as in this is also related with the fixing the accountability on the failure of this budget, right? Why this budget has failed specifically, what were the deviations because of which the budget has failed. If it is if it was a fault of the budget in itself, as in it was too far away from the actual figures, if it was too far away from the practical events, or if there was a person responsible, so these deviations are found and then accountability is fixed. Then effective utilization of resources, we have already talked about this. Then revision of plans, we have been talking about this as well, that based on the past experience, right, these changes are made in the current budgets. All right. Then there are a few other advantages as well. Implementation of standard costing system. Again, this system is implemented in the business. Then cost consciousness, this is also related with the control on the cost, on the expenditure that is being incurred by the business. All right. Then it also helps in improving the credit rating of the business. All right. So this was it for this session. I think we are running out of time here. Yes. So in this topic, we looked at the very basics of budget and budgeting and budgetary control system. This was again just to give you a perspective of how these classes would be conducted at CollegeDekho, and how detailed these explanations would be of each of these topics. All right. And this was it for this demo session. I hope to see you in one of our 1 hour sessions, which are regular classes. And I hope you had a good learning today. Thank you so much for logging in.